Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for more stories. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Nolan Mercer adjusted his tie in the mirror of their penthouse bathroom, his fingers working with practiced ease. At 34, he carried himself with quiet confidence, dark hair neatly styled, suit well-fitted but not flashy. The sound of Kelsey's laughter drifted in from their bedroom, probably another call with her social circle. "Darling." Kelsey's voice carried a hint of impatience. "The Harrington's charity gala starts in an hour. Are you ready?" Nolan stepped out of the bathroom to find his wife perched on the edge of their king-sized bed, phone in hand. At 29, Kelsey Hart Mercer was a vision in her emerald evening gown, her blonde hair cascading in perfect waves. She barely glanced up from her screen. "Just about," Nolan replied, reaching for his watch. "I might have to leave early, though the community center project." Kelsey's perfectly manicured fingers paused over her phone. "Again, Nolan? These charity projects of yours." She did not finish the sentence, but her tone said enough. "It's important work, Kel. We're creating a space that could change lives in that neighborhood." She hummed, attention already back on her phone. "Just like the last few pro bono projects change lives." Meanwhile, the Vallas are breaking ground on their 5th luxury development this year. Nolan felt a familiar tightness in his chest. "The Vallas have different priorities." "Yes, they do," Kelsey muttered, rising from the bed. "They prioritize success." The drive to the gala was quiet, filled only with the soft purr of their Audi's engine. Not a top-tier luxury vehicle by certain standards, but Nolan had always believed in practical choices. He caught her glancing at a passing Aston Martin, her lips pursing slightly. The Harrington Hotel's grand ballroom buzzed with Manhattan's elite. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as waiters weaved through the crowd with champagne flutes. Nolan watched as Kelsey seamlessly slipped into her element, air-kissing acquaintances and laughing at inside jokes. "Nolan Mercer." A booming voice cut through the chatter. "The man who builds playgrounds while the rest of us build empires." Preston Vale approached them, his 6'2" frame wrapped in what was undoubtedly a bespoke Italian suit. His father, Graham Vale, CEO of Vale Dynamics, followed close behind, wearing his usual expression of measured superiority. "Preston." Nolan nodded politely. "Some of us believe in giving back to the community." "How noble." Preston's smile didn't reach his eyes. He turned to Kelsey, his gaze lingering. "Mrs. Mercer, you look absolutely stunning tonight." "That dress is Oscar de la Renta, isn't it?" Kelsey beamed. "Good eye, Preston. Most men wouldn't notice." "Most men don't appreciate true quality when they see it," Preston replied smoothly, producing a fresh champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Speaking of which, I'd love your opinion on our newest development. The penthouse views are breathtaking." Nolan watched as his wife's eyes lit up, her body language shifting subtly toward Preston. He told himself it was just networking, just Kelsey being her social self. "If you'll excuse me," Nolan said, checking his phone. "I need to take this call about the community center." Kelsey's smile tightened. "Of course you do." As Nolan stepped away, he heard Preston's voice. "Your husband's dedication to charity is admirable, but surely a woman like you deserves someone with bigger ambitions." The comment stung, but Nolan pushed it aside. He had a conference call with his team about the center's accessibility features. That was what mattered, wasn't it? The next couple of weeks fell into a pattern. Nolan threw himself into the community center project, working late into the night. Kelsey filled her days with charity lunches and social events, her phone constantly buzzing with messages. One evening, Nolan came home early, hoping to surprise her with dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant. He found her dressed for going out, applying a final touch of lipstick. "Perfect timing," he said. "I got us a table at Le Grenier." Kelsey's hand paused. "Why have plans already?" "The Vallas are hosting a private viewing of their new property development." "The same development Preston mentioned at the gala?" "Don't start," Kelsey sighed. "It's networking. You know how important connections are in this city." "I know," Nolan conceded. "I just miss spending time with you. Maybe if you spent less time on pro bono work and more time building your actual career." She let the words hang in the air. "I have to go. Don't wait up." The pattern continued. Kelsey's absences grew longer, her excuses more elaborate. Nolan buried himself deeper in his work, telling himself that once the community center was complete, things would improve. One afternoon, his best friend, Trevor Collins, dropped by his office. The lawyer's usually cheerful face was creased with concern. "Nolan, we need to talk about the center's permits. I thought we had everything in order." "Not about work." Trevor settled into a chair. "About Kelsey." Nolan's fingers stilled over his keyboard. "What about her?" "I saw her yesterday at the Langley Hotel, probably another charity lunch with Preston Vale. Looking very intimate." Nolan's jaw tightened. "They're colleagues, Trevor. The Valles are important people in our circle." Trevor leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm your best friend. I'm also a lawyer who's seen enough divorces to recognize the signs. Kelsey's behavior has changed: the late nights, the sudden interest in the Valles projects, the way she looks at Preston." "That's enough," Nolan cut him off. "Kelsey wouldn't. She's not that kind of person." But that night, as he lay awake in their bed, Kelsey sighed, cold and empty. Trevor's words echoed in his mind. The seeds of doubt had been planted, taking root in the fertile soil of his growing unease. The community center project progressed, but Nolan's home life continued to unravel. Kelsey's clothes multiplied, her social calendar packed with events he wasn't invited to. When they did attend functions together, she gravitated toward Preston, laughing too loudly at his jokes, standing too close. At a museum fundraiser, Nolan overheard two women whispering behind their champagne flutes. "Poor Nolan Mercer. He has no idea, does he? Kelsey's been spending an awful lot of time at the Valles' new development. Can you blame her? Preston Vale is worth billions. Nolan's just comfortable." The words burrowed under his skin, but he smiled and nodded through the evening, watching as his wife danced with Preston, their bodies moving with practiced familiarity. Later that night, as Kelsey stumbled into their apartment, cheeks flushed from champagne, Nolan asked, "Are you happy with me?" She paused, mascara slightly smudged, looking at him as if seeing him for the first time. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." Kelsey laughed, but it wasn't the warm sound he'd fallen in love with. "Happy with your modest ambitions and your charity projects? While my friends vacation in Monaco and collect summer homes like stamps." She kicked off her heels. "I'm surviving, Nolan. That's different from happy." The words hit him like physical blows, but he maintained his composure. "I thought we wanted the same things, a meaningful life, making a difference. We wanted those things in our 20s, she cut him off. "I've grown up. Maybe it's time you did, too." She disappeared into their bedroom, leaving Nolan alone with the truth he'd been avoiding. The woman he loved was slipping away, and he didn't know how to stop it. The autumn evening carried a bite of approaching winter as Nolan drove home from the community center site. Construction was ahead of schedule, but his triumph felt hollow without someone to share it with. On impulse, he stopped at Kelsey's favorite patisserie, picking up the chocolate eclair she loved. The penthouse was quiet when he entered, the lights dimmed. "Kel?" he called out, setting the pastry box on the kitchen counter. No answer. A buzzing sound drew his attention. Kelsey's secondary phone, the one she claimed was for work emergencies, lay forgotten on the marble countertop. As Nolan moved to plug it in, a message notification illuminated the screen. "Preston, miss you already. Can't wait for tomorrow, our usual suite." Nolan's hand trembled as he picked up the phone. More messages appeared. "Kelsey, last night was amazing. Nolan's working late again, his loss. Preston, he doesn't deserve you. A woman like you needs a real man, not some charitable architect playing at success. Kelsey, soon, baby, just need to handle things delicately. Don't want to mess up the prenup." The pastry box fell to the floor as Nolan scrolled through months of messages, each one more damning than the last. Pictures, hotel receipts, private jokes about his obliviousness. His world contracted to the glowing screen in his hands, reality crumbling around him. The sound of keys in the door barely registered. Kelsey swept in, shopping bags on her arm, humming softly. She froze when she saw Nolan standing in the kitchen, her phone in his hand. "Nolan dash," her voice wavered. "What are you doing with my phone?" He looked up, his face carved from stone. "How long?" "I don't know what your dash, how long." The word cut through the air like a blade. Kelsey's facade cracked, then shattered. Her laugh was brittle, cutting. "Long enough to know what I've been missing." "Missing?" Nolan's voice was dangerously quiet. "We built a life together. We had dreams. Plans." "Your dreams, Nolan. Your plans." She dropped her shopping bags, her perfect mask falling away to reveal something harder, colder. Community centers and affordable housing while I watch my friends jet off to Paris for lunch while I squeeze into last season's Gucci because my husband thinks modesty is a virtue. So that's what this is about money. It's about ambition, status, things you clearly don't understand. Kelsey's words dripped with disdain. Preston gets it. He knows what it means to truly succeed in this city. And what does success look like, Kelsey? Sneaking around in hotel rooms, planning how to circumvent our prenup? Her eyes narrowed. You read my private messages? Your messages with your lover on the phone I pay for? Nolan's laugh was hollow. Should I apologize for interrupting your affair? Affairs happen all the time in our circle, Nolan. The difference is most husbands are too busy building their empires to notice. She stepped closer, voice dropping to a cruel whisper. But you? You're too busy playing savior to see what's right in front of you. Get out. Excuse me. Get out. Nolan's control slipped, his voice rising. Pack your things and get out of my home. Your home. Kelsey laughed. This place, this life, it's nothing compared to what Preston can give me, what he already gives me. She strode to their bedroom, emerging minutes later with a pre-packed overnight bag. Of course, she had one ready. My lawyers will be in touch. Try not to let your bleeding heart bankrupt you in the divorce. The door slammed behind her, leaving Nolan alone in the penthouse that had once felt like home. He stood there, motionless, as night fell over the city. His phone buzzed repeatedly, probably Trevor checking in. He ignored it. The divorce proceedings moved quickly, sterile conference rooms replacing courtrooms. Trevor, serving as Nolan's lawyer, fought fiercely against Kelsey's attempts to claim half of his assets. She's trying to paint you as emotionally negligent, Trevor explained during one strategy session. Claims your focus on charitable work constituted abandonment. Nolan stared out the office window. Let her have the furniture, the art. I don't care. Nolan, she's not just after the furniture. She wants your savings, your investments. I said I don't care. Nolan turned to his friend. I just want this over. But Kelsey and Preston weren't content with a quiet dissolution. They turned their affair into a society spectacle, appearing together at every high-profile event. Nolan couldn't escape them. Their pictures dominated social media, their names whispered at every function. At the annual Architects Guild dinner and event, Nolan couldn't avoid. Preston made sure to parade Kelsey past his table. She wore a dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, diamonds dripping from her ears. Nolan, she purred, Preston's arm possessively around her waist. Still working on that little community center? Actually, Preston interjected. I heard it's having permit issues. Such a shame when amateur projects fall apart. Nolan maintained his composure, years of dealing with difficult clients coming in handy. The center's doing fine, Preston, but I'm sure you have more interesting things to discuss, hotel suites to book, perhaps. Kelsey's smile faltered slightly, but Preston laughed. Better than booking contractor meetings in low-income neighborhoods. Tell me, Nolan, how does it feel knowing your wife traded up? Ex-wife, Nolan corrected, rising from his seat. And I wouldn't call trading dignity for dollars up. But we all have different standards. He left them there, their laughter following him out of the ballroom. In the taxi home, he finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his humiliation, his failure, his loss. The next morning, as he sat in his home office reviewing construction documents, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made him answer. Nolan Mercer speaking. Hello, son. The voice was deep, authoritative, and achingly familiar. We need to talk. Nolan's breath caught in his throat. Dad? I've been watching what's happening with you and Kelsey. Edward Mercer's voice carried decades of power and influence. I think it's time I stepped in. After 14 years of minimal contact, now you want to step in. I know I've been absent, focused on building Mercer Holdings instead of being there for you. But I've always kept an eye on you. And what these people are doing to you, it ends now. Nolan gripped the phone tighter. What are you suggesting? Come to my office tomorrow. Mercer Holdings headquarters. It's time you learned what real power looks like. The line went dead, leaving Nolan staring at his phone, his father's words echoing in his mind. After years of maintaining his independence from his father's wealth and influence, was he really considering this? His eyes fell on a society magazine on his desk, Preston and Kelsey's smiling faces mocking him from the cover. Maybe it was time to stop playing by their rules. Maybe it was time to show them what a Mercer was truly capable of. The Mercer Holdings Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a spear of glass and steel, its 88 stories dwarfing the surrounding buildings. Nolan stood in the lobby, this architect's eye appreciating the seamless blend of power and elegance in the design. How many times had he passed this building, pretending it had nothing to do with him? Mr. Mercer, a polished executive assistant, approached him. "Your father is expecting you. Please follow me." The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, each passing level marking another step toward a confrontation 14 years in the making. The assistant led him through a series of increasingly opulent offices until they reached a massive set of double doors. "Go right in, sir." Nolan pushed through the doors into what could have been a modern-day throne room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a godlike view of the city while priceless art adorned the walls. Behind an imposing desk of polished mahogany sat Edward Mercer, looking exactly as Nolan remembered, silver hair immaculately styled, posture radiating authority. At 63, Edward carried the weight of his empire with practiced ease. "Nolan." Edward rose, circling his desk. "You look well." "Do I?" Nolan met his father's gaze. "Because I feel like hell." Edward's expression softened marginally. "I know. I've been monitoring the situation, your divorce, the Vale boys' interference. All of it." "Monitoring?" Nolan's laugh was bitter. "That's what you do best, isn't it? Watch from a distance." "While you insisted on making your own way," Edward interrupted. "While you rejected every offer of help, determined to prove yourself without the Mercer name. I wanted to succeed on my own merits. And you have." Edward gestured to a leather chair. "Sit. We have much to discuss." Nolan sank into the chair, the leather creaking softly. Edward returned to his desk, pressing a button on his intercom. "Nora, hold all my calls and bring in the Vale Dynamics files." "The Vale files?" Nolan leaned forward. "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to show my son exactly what he's been denying himself all these years." Edward pulled up a holographic display, projecting financial charts into the air between them. Mercer Holdings' current market value just over $5 billion. Holdings in technology, real estate, pharmaceuticals, clean energy. And that's just the public face. Nolan stared at the floating numbers. Each digit represented more money than he'd ever dreamed of handling. "Why show me this now?" "Because it's time you took your place in this company, not as my son, but as my successor." The word hung in the air between them. Successor. Nolan's mind raced implications, possibilities, consequences. "And the Vallis?" "Graham Vale's company is a minor holding in our portfolio, one that's about to become even more minor." Edward's eyes glittered. "Did you know Vale Dynamics is facing a hostile takeover?" "No. That's because it hasn't happened yet." A knock at the door interrupted them. The assistant entered with a thick folder, placing it on Edward's desk before quietly withdrawing. "Your friend Trevor is a good lawyer," Edward continued. "But he's fighting this battle with a pocket knife. I'm offering you a nuclear arsenal." Nolan stood, pacing to the windows. Below, the city sprawled out like a chessboard. For the first time, he saw it through his father's eyes, not as a collection of buildings and streets, but as a field of play where power and influence were the only rules that mattered. "The community center," he said finally. "The one I'm building. Preston and Kelsey have been trying to block its permits, spreading rumors about structural issues. Consider those problems solved." Edward pressed another button, and a new set of documents appeared in the air. "In fact, consider the entire project fully funded with a few improvements, of course. The Mercer Community Center has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Nolan turned back to his father. "Why now after all these years?" "Because watching that social climbing dilettante and her trust fund boy toy try to destroy my son's life has awakened something in me." Edward stood, his presence filling the room. "Something I should have embraced years ago, fatherhood." The moment was interrupted by a commotion outside, voices raised, the assistant protesting. Then the doors burst open. Kelsey strode in, Preston and Graham Vale close behind. She wore a suit that probably cost more than most cars, her face a mask of practiced disdain. The mask slipped momentarily when she saw Nolan. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, then caught herself, lips curving into a cruel smile. "Did you come here to beg for a job, poor boy?" Preston laughed, adjusting his Italian silk tie. "Sorry, old sport, but poor men aren't allowed in this building." Graham Vale stepped forward, all corporate smoothness. "Edward, I wasn't aware we had company." Perhaps we should reschedule our meeting. Oh no. Edward's voice cut through the room like Arctic wind. This meeting is happening exactly when it should. He turned to Graham. You're fired. The words dropped into the silence like stones into a pond. Graham's face drained of color. What fired? Terminated. Released from your position. Edward's smile was terrifying in its calmness. And once the board reviews the evidence of your incompetence and your son's corporate espionage attempts, you'll be lucky if termination is all that happens. Preston's arrogance crumbled. Corporate espionage? That's ridiculous. Is it? Edward pressed another button, and new documents filled the air. Shall we discuss the attempted sabotage of the community center? The falsified permit issues? The bribes to city officials? Kelsey stepped back, her heels catching on the plush carpet. Her eyes darted between Preston, who looked increasingly panicked, and Nolan, who stood silently beside his father. You can't do this, Graham protested. Vale Dynamics is now majority owned by Mercer Holdings, Edward finished. Has been for months through a series of shell companies. I was waiting for the right moment to reveal that particular card. He turned to Nolan. Would you like to do the honors, son? Nolan stepped forward, feeling the weight of the Mercer name settling onto his shoulders like armor. Get out. All of you. Kelsey's voice turned pleading, her mask cracking completely. Nolan, you don't understand. I never meant dash, save it for the tabloids. Nolan cut her off. I'm sure they'll be very interested in this story: the social climbing trophy wife, the trust fund playboy, and the corporate corruption that brought them all down. Preston's face contorted with rage. This isn't over, Mercer. Oh, but it is, Edward said softly. Security will escort you out. And do remember, this building doesn't allow poor people. As security led the shell-shocked trio away, Nolan turned to his father. The office felt different now, less like a foreign territory and more like an inheritance. A birthright he had denied for too long. Thank you, he said simply. Edward nodded, understanding all the words unspoken between them. Welcome to Mercer Holdings, son. Shall we begin? The sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. In his father's office, high above the city that had nearly broken him, Nolan Mercer began to learn what real power looked like. The fall was over. The rise was about to begin. Nolan's fingers traced over the embossed business cards on his new desk. Nolan Mercer, Senior Executive Director, Mercer Holdings. The weight of the title pressed down on him like a physical thing. For months had passed since the confrontation in his father's office, and the learning curve had been steep. Your 9 is here, Mr. Mercer. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Send them in, Jenna. 6 executives filed into his office, their nervous energy palpable. Nolan had earned a reputation for thoroughness bordering on ruthlessness in project reviews. Edward's training had been intensive, relentless. Show me the plans, Nolan commanded, and holographic displays sprang to life, showing detailed projections of upcoming developments. As the team presented, Nolan's mind wandered to his father's words from their morning meeting. Power isn't about making people fear you, son. It's about making them respect you enough that fear becomes unnecessary. These profit margins, Nolan interrupted, zooming in on a particular section. They're inflated. You're not accounting for the new environmental regulations taking effect next quarter. The team leader, Hanley, blanched. Sir, we thought dash, you thought wrong. Nolan's voice remained level. Redo the calculations. I want real numbers, not wishful thinking. We build on solid ground here, gentlemen. Dismissed. As they hurried out, Trevor stuck his head in. Brutal as ever, I see. Nolan smiled at his friend, now Mercer Holdings' chief legal officer. They'll learn. How's the Vale situation? Trevor dropped into a chair, loosening his tie. Graham's trying to rally support among minor shareholders, but nobody wants to back a sinking ship. The evidence of their corporate espionage is too damning. And Preston's still making threats, but his lawyer's smarter than he is. They know we have enough to bury them. Nolan nodded, pulling up another holographic display. What about the security breaches? That's actually why I'm here. Trevor leaned forward. We need better cybersecurity. The attacks are getting more sophisticated. Kelsey and Preston probably. They're desperate, which makes them dangerous. Nolan pressed a button on his intercom. Jenna, get me Maya Delgado from IT security immediately. 20 minutes later, Maya Delgado strode into his office. At 30, She carried herself with the confident precision of someone who knew exactly how valuable she was. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, suit professional but unremarkable, the kind of person most would overlook in a crowd. Nolan had learned that was exactly how she liked it. "Mr. Mercer," she greeted him, then nodded to Trevor. "Mr. Collins, I assume this is about the recent security probes." "Bring me up to speed," Nolan instructed. Maya pulled out her tablet, projecting her own set of data. "We've detected multiple attempted intrusions over the past week, sophisticated ones. They're targeting project files, financial records, personal communications. Can you stop them?" "I already have." A hint of pride colored her voice. "But they'll try again. They're using cutting-edge tech, Mr. Mercer. Someone's bankrolling these attacks." "The Valas," Trevor supplied. "What do you need?" Nolan asked. Maya's eyes lit up. "Give me a team, full autonomy, and access to the quantum computing division." "Done." Nolan made a note. "But I want more than defense. I want to know everything they're planning before they plan it." "Sir," Maya hesitated. "That level of surveillance might not be entirely legal." Trevor interjected. "Leave that to me. I'll draw up the paperwork to make it ironclad." Nolan studied Maya's face, noting her hesitation. "Ms. Delgado, do you know what they're trying to do to this company, to me? I've heard rumors. They're not just attacking a corporation, they're attacking my family's legacy. My father's life's work." Nolan stood, moving to stand before her. "I need to know, are you with us?" Maya met his gaze, and something shifted in her expression. "Yes, sir. I'm with you." "Good. Trevor will handle the legal framework. You'll report directly to me." After they left, Nolan sat in his office, watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled. His phone buzzed. A message from Edward. "Dinner tonight. Need to discuss European expansion." The lessons were brutal but necessary. Edward was making up for lost time. A notification popped up. A society page featuring Kelsey and Preston at some gala. Their smiles looked strained now. Their clothes, a bit less cutting edge. The Vale fortune was dwindling. Their social capital evaporating. Nolan closed the article. They didn't matter anymore. He had bigger concerns. The next morning, Maya was waiting in his office with her preliminary report. "They're planning something big," she said without preamble. "I've intercepted communication between Preston and several known corporate raiders. They're trying to piece together enough capital for one last attack." "Let them try." Nolan pulled up the company's defense protocols. "We'll be ready." "There's more." Maya hesitated. "Your ex-wife, she's been making calls, too. To journalists, investors, anyone who might listen. She's trying to spin a story about corruption at Mercer Holdings." Nolan's jaw tightened. "Evidence?" "None that would stand up. But in the court of public opinion, handle it." The words came out sharper than he intended. "Sorry. Just do what needs to be done." Maya nodded, but lingered. "Mr. Mercer, Nolan, are you sure this is what you want? This level of surveillance, of control?" "What I want." Nolan laughed softly. "What I want is to never be blindsided again, to never watch someone I trusted tear my life apart while I stood by, oblivious." "And after, when you've won, what then?" The question caught him off guard. "Just remember why you started this," Maya said quietly. "Don't let the power become the point." She left him with those words echoing in his mind. But there was no time for philosophical debates. The empire needed protecting. The weeks blurred together in a haze of meetings, strategic planning, and late-night sessions. Nolan learned to navigate boardrooms like battlefields, to read financial reports like war dispatches. Edward watched his transformation with a mixture of pride and concern. "You're becoming quite the corporate warrior," his father remarked one evening over scotch. "I learned from the best. Just remember, the goal isn't to destroy them, son. It's to win." But sometimes, Nolan wondered if there was a difference anymore. The headline blazed across Nolan's tablet. "Mercer Heir, Corporate Crusader or Power Mad Prince." The article beneath was a masterpiece of innuendo and half-truths, painting him as a vengeful son using his father's empire to wage personal vendettas. "Kelsey's handiwork," Trevor said, scanning the piece. "She always did have a way with the press." Nolan tossed the tablet aside. "Get our PR team on it and find out which journalist wrote this hit piece." "Already done." Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "They're not stopping there. They're going after all of us now." "What do you mean?" The Bar Association received an anonymous complaint about my handling of your divorce allegations of evidence tampering and witness intimidation. Nolan's hands curled into fists. They're targeting you to get to me. It gets worse. Someone leaked Maya's college records doctored to show academic misconduct. It's all lies, but her reputation dash, where is she? In her office. She's been there all night trying to trace the leak. Nolan found Maya surrounded by holographic displays, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. She didn't look up when he entered. I almost have them, she muttered. The trail leads through 7 proxy servers, but there's a pattern dash, Maya. Nolan's voice cut through her focus. Go home. Get some rest. They're trying to destroy everything I've built. Her voice cracked slightly. My credentials. My reputation. Let them try. Nolan moved closer, shutting down her displays with a gesture. We'll fight back together. She finally looked at him, vulnerability breaking through her professional mask. Why? Why risk your own reputation defending me? Because you're one of mine now, and I protect my people. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. For a moment, neither moved. Then Maya straightened, professional demeanor sliding back into place. I found something in their communication patterns. They're not just attacking us randomly. There's a plan. She brought up a new display, showing a complex web of connections. They're trying to force a shareholder vote. If they can create enough doubt about your leadership, about the company's stability, they think they can convince the board to remove you. Nolan studied the patterns. Clever. That's not all. Maya highlighted several notes. These transactions, someone's feeding them inside information. We have a mole. The revelation should have angered him, but Nolan felt oddly calm. Can you find them? Given time, yes. But, Nolan, what they're doing to your reputation, to all of us, it's personal. Of course it's personal. They can't beat us in business, so they're trying to destroy us socially. Nolan's voice hardened. What they don't understand is that I'm not playing their game anymore. I'm playing mine. He returned to his office to find Edward waiting. The board is concerned, his father said without preamble. About the articles, the allegations, about you. Edward sat heavily. They think you're too focused on personal vendettas, that you're letting emotion cloud your judgment. And what do you think? I think you're becoming exactly what they accuse you of being. Edward's voice was gentle but firm. A man consumed by power and revenge. They started this. And you'll finish it. But at what cost? Edward stood, moving to face his son. I taught you how to wield power, Nolan. I never meant for it to wield you. The words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Nolan had changed. He felt it in the way people looked at him now, with respect. Yes, but also fear. Even Trevor seemed hesitant sometimes. That night, unable to sleep, Nolan found himself in the office gym, pounding a punching bag with measured fury. He didn't hear Maya enter until she spoke. Your form's terrible. He stopped, breathing hard. Didn't know you were a boxing expert. There's a lot you don't know about me. She moved closer, adjusting his stance. You're telegraphing your moves. Makes you predictable. Like I'm being now with the Valles? She stepped back. You said it, not me. But yes, you're letting them dictate your actions. Dancing to their tune. What would you suggest? Stop reacting. Start thinking strategically. She met his gaze. The Nolan Mercer I first met wanted to build things, not destroy them. What happened to him? The question hit harder than any punch. What had happened to that Nolan Mercer, the one who dreamed of community centers and affordable housing? Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Trevor's message was brief. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow. They're making their move. Nolan looked at Maya and saw the concern in her eyes. I need you to find that mole. Tonight. Already working on it. She hesitated. Nolan, whatever happens tomorrow, remember who you are, not who they're trying to make you become. He watched her leave, her words echoing in his mind. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of his original purpose. The question was whether he could find it again without losing everything he'd built. The boardroom hummed with tension as Nolan took his seat at the head of the table. 23 pairs of eyes watched him, some sympathetic, others calculating. Edward sat to his right, face impassive. This emergency session will come to order, the board secretary announced. We're here to address concerns about recent company direction and leadership decisions. Nolan's phone buzzed silently, a message from Maya. Found the mole. You won't believe who it is. Coming up now. Before we begin, Nolan said, standing and buttoning his jacket. I believe we have some housekeeping to address. The boardroom doors opened and Maya strode in, tablet in hand. Behind her came security escorting a struggling figure. Lynn Park, head of Pacific Operations and one of the board's most vocal critics of Nolan's leadership. Ms. Park, Nolan's voice carried to the corners of the room. Would you like to explain the $11.2 million deposited in your Cayman account, or shall I? The room erupted in whispers. Lynn's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Maya stepped forward, projecting financial records into the air. 4 transfers, all traced back to shell companies owned by Veil Dynamics, in exchange for confidential Mercer Holdings data. That's impossible. Is it? Nolan circled the table slowly. Just like it's impossible you've been feeding information to Preston Vale that you helped orchestrate this entire smear campaign. You can't prove actually. Trevor spoke up from the doorway. We can prove all of it. The evidence has already been sent to the SEC. They're very interested in speaking with you. Security led the shell-shocked board member away as Nolan addressed the remaining directors. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been led to believe my personal vendetta against the Vallas was damaging this company. He paused, letting the words settle. The truth is, they've been trying to destroy us from within. And some of you helped them. The mood in the room shifted like wind changing direction. Directors who'd been ready to challenge Nolan's leadership now sat in uncomfortable silence. But that ends today. Nolan pulled up new projections. While you've been concerned about my motivations, Mercer Holdings has increased market share by 16%. Our clean energy division secured contracts in 3 new countries, and our community development initiative has created thousands of jobs. Edward watched his son with undisguised pride as Nolan continued. We can waste more time questioning my leadership, or we can focus on what matters: growing this company, creating value, and making a real difference. The vote that followed was unanimous. Nolan retained his position with full board backing. As the directors filed out, Trevor approached with new information. The SEC is moving on Veil Dynamics. The evidence of their market manipulation is irrefutable, and Preston tried to liquidate assets, but we've frozen most of their accounts legally, he added with a grim smile. Maya joined them, her tablet displaying more data. Their entire network is falling apart. The press has turned on them. Seems Kelsey's journalist friends don't like backing losers. Nolan nodded, satisfaction warring with a strange emptiness. Make sure Ms. Park's cooperation with authorities is publicized. I want everyone to know the price of betraying Mercer Holdings. Later, in his office, Edward found him staring out at the city. You handled that well, his father said. Though I suspect you knew about Park's betrayal before today. 4 days ago, Nolan admitted. Maya discovered it, but we needed the right moment. Theatrical, Edward chuckled, but effective. The board won't challenge you again. They shouldn't have challenged me in the first place. Edward studied his son. You've changed, Nolan. The board saw it. I see it. The question is, do you? Before Nolan could respond, his phone lit up with an urgent alert. Preston Vale was holding a press conference. He switched on the office media wall. Preston's face appeared strained and sweating despite expensive grooming. Kelsey stood beside him, her outfit slightly less polished than usual, her smile brittle. Veil Dynamics has been the victim of a coordinated attack, Preston declared, voice cracking. These allegations of market manipulation are completely false. Send it, Nolan commanded into his phone. On screen, Preston faltered as his phone buzzed. His face went pale. Mr. Vale, a reporter called out. Can you comment on the evidence just released showing your company's illegal trading activities? Another reporter jumped in. What about documented bribes to city officials and the SEC investigation into your personal accounts? Preston's composure crumbled. No comment. This press conference is over. Kelsey grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away from the podium, but the damage was done. Clips of Preston's meltdown spread across social media within minutes. Perfect timing, Maya remarked, entering the office. The trading algorithms you asked me to track just triggered Veil Dynamics stock is in free fall. Trevor arrived moments later, legal documents in hand. The SEC is moving in. Graham Vale just called. He's willing to testify against his own son in exchange for leniency. Like father, like son, Edward commented dryly. Both willing to betray each other to save themselves. Nolan watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens: news reports, stock tickers, social feeds. The empire the Vallas had built was crumbling in real time. "Sir," Maya's voice carried a note of concern. "There's movement at Vale Tower. Security cameras show them removing files and hard drives." "Already handled," Nolan assured her. "The FBI is waiting. Destroying evidence will only add to the charges." The next few hours passed in a blur of reports and reactions. Vale Dynamics stock continued to plummet. Board members resigned en masse. Long-buried scandals surfaced to eager journalists. As evening fell, Nolan's private elevator chimed. The doors opened to reveal a disheveled Preston and a tear-streaked Kelsey. "You have some nerve coming here," Trevor started, but Nolan held up a hand. "Let them speak." Kelsey stepped forward, voice trembling. "You've made your point. You've won. Just tell us what you want." "What I want," Nolan's voice was eerily calm, "is for you to understand exactly what you did, not just to me, but to everyone you hurt with your games. We can make a deal." Preston tried, desperation evident. "We have information about other companies, other executives always trying to trade up, aren't you?" Nolan cut him off. "Always looking for the next better deal, the next person to betray." He slid a folder across his desk. "These documents detail your crimes: corporate espionage, market manipulation, bribes. The FBI has copies. The SEC has copies. The only question is, do you cooperate or make it worse?" Preston grabbed the folder, hands shaking. "This will destroy us. Like you tried to destroy me." Nolan stood. "The difference is, I'm doing this legally. Everything documented. Everything by the book." "Nolan," Kelsey's voice cracked. "Please, I am sorry. I never meant save it for the court," he interrupted. "You'll need it." Security arrived to escort them out. As they reached the door, Nolan called after them. "Oh, and Preston, remember what you said about poor men not being allowed in this building?" He smiled coldly. "You might want to start getting used to being poor." After they left, silence fell over the office. Edward placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's done, son. You've won." Nolan stared at the city lights, feeling strangely hollow. "Have I? Sometimes I wonder what winning really means." "It means you survived," Maya said quietly. "You fought back and you won. But at what cost?" Nolan turned to face them: his father, Trevor, Maya, the people who had stood by him through it all. "Look at what I've become." "You became what you needed to be," Edward replied. "The question is, what will you become now?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Act 2 had reached its end. The phoenix had risen. Retribution had been achieved. But the story wasn't over. The mahogany conference table in Nolan's office seemed to stretch endlessly as Preston Vale and Kelsey sat across from him, their lawyers flanking them like nervous sentinels. The morning sun illuminated the room, highlighting the deep circles under Preston's eyes and the slight tremor in Kelsey's manicured hands. "Here's our offer," Preston's lawyer said, pushing a folder across the table. "Mr. Vale is willing to provide detailed information about corporate irregularities at Harper Industrial and Thomson Worldwide. Information that could be valuable to Mercer Holdings." Nolan didn't touch the folder. "More betrayals, that's your bargaining chip." "Information is power." Preston leaned forward, desperation bleeding through his practiced confidence. "These companies, they're all dirty. We can help you take them down." "The way you tried to take me down," Nolan replied evenly. "Selling out your father's associates to save yourself." Kelsey placed a hand on Preston's arm, silencing him. "Nolan, please. We're trying to make this right." "Make it right." Nolan finally opened the folder, scanning the contents. "You're trying to trade other people's secrets to escape consequences. That's not making anything right. That's just being who you've always been." "We're facing serious prison time," Preston's lawyer interjected. "My client is merely trying to do what he always does," Nolan cut in. "Find someone else to step on." He closed the folder. "The answer is no. You're making a mistake." Preston's composure cracked. "These people are worse than us. They've done things I don't care what they've done. This isn't about them. It's about you facing the consequences of your actions." Kelsey's lawyer cleared her throat. "Ms. Hart Mercer is prepared to make a public statement, a full admission of her role in the corporate espionage and smear campaign in exchange for what?" Nolan asked coldly. "A reduced sentence? House arrest?" He studied his ex-wife's face. Perfect makeup couldn't hide her fear. You really haven't learned anything. Have you still trying to manipulate your way out? What do you want from us? Kelsey burst out. Money? Public humiliation? You've already taken everything. I want justice. Nolan stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Not revenge. Not anymore. Justice. The door opened, and Trevor entered, followed by 2 FBI agents. Your client's cooperation won't be necessary, Trevor informed the lawyers. We have enough evidence for multiple felony charges. You can't do this. Preston stood, his chair scraping back. My father is cooperating fully with the authorities, one of the agents said. He's very interested in discussing your role in the manipulation scheme. Kelsey's composure shattered. He's lying. Graham would never dash. He already has, Trevor said, producing a tablet showing Graham Vale's signed confession. Turns out family loyalty only goes so far when you're facing 2 decades in federal prison. As the agents led Preston and Kelsey away, Nolan caught a final glimpse of their faces' shock, giving way to the dawning realization that their world had truly ended. Maya appeared in the doorway after they left. That was intense. They're still trying to play games. Nolan shook his head. Still think they can talk their way out of anything. People rarely change their nature, she said, moving into the room and setting a tablet on his desk. The FBI found more at Vale Tower: decades of corruption, fraud. The whole empire was built on lies. Like father, like son, Trevor commented. Nolan picked up the tablet, scanning the findings. Send copies to the SEC and the Justice Department. Make sure nothing gets buried. Already done, Maya said, then hesitated. There's something else. Kelsey has been trying to contact your father. Nolan's head snapped up. What? She sent him a private message claiming she has information about threats to Mercer Holdings. Information she'll only share with him personally. More manipulation, Trevor scoffed. She's desperate, Maya agreed. But what? Desperate people do dangerous things. Maybe we should at least hear what she has to say. You think she's actually found something? I think dismissing her entirely might be a mistake. Even a cornered rat can be dangerous. The metaphor hung in the air as Nolan considered his options. Set up a meeting, but not with my father. With me. Public place, neutral, and half the security team standing by. Maya nodded, making notes on her tablet. I'll arrange it. Later that evening, Nolan sat in his father's study, sharing the day's events over aged scotch. You're taking an unnecessary risk, Edward warned. Meeting her serves no purpose. Maybe. Nolan swirled the amber liquid. But something feels wrong. Kelsey's manipulative, but she isn't stupid. She wouldn't reach out without a reason. The reason is desperation, Edward said. She's trying to create leverage where none exists. Perhaps. But what if we've missed something? Edward studied his son's face. You've changed, Nolan. A month ago, you wouldn't have considered hearing her out. A month ago, I was focused solely on retribution. Now, Nolan paused. Now I want to make sure we've considered all angles, that justice is truly served. And this has nothing to do with Ms. Delgado's influence. Edward's tone was mild. Nolan's hand stilled on his glass. What do you mean? I'm not blind, son. I see how you look at her, how carefully you weigh her counsel. His voice softened. She's good for you. Helps you see beyond the immediate satisfaction of payback. Before Nolan could respond, his phone buzzed. Maya. Meeting arranged. Tomorrow, noon. St. Regis Rooftop Restaurant. Well, Nolan showed his father the message. I guess we'll find out what Kelsey's game is. The next morning, Nolan stood in his office preparing. Trevor paced nearby, clearly unhappy. At least let me come, his friend insisted. She'll be more likely to talk if it's just me, Nolan said, checking his watch. Security in place, 2 plainclothes at the bar, 2 at the entrance. Maya is monitoring all communications in and out of the building. A knock interrupted them. Maya entered, face serious. Surveillance team just reported in. Kelsey arrived early. She's alone, but she's been making calls. Lots of them. We can't trace who. Keep monitoring, Nolan said. If anything feels wrong, shut it down. I will. She moved closer, adjusting his tie slightly. The gesture was professional, but her fingers lingered a moment too long. Nolan caught her hand before she could step back. I'll be careful, he promised softly. The St. Regis rooftop offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, but Nolan barely noticed as he approached Kelsey's table. She wore a simple black dress. Her usual flash of jewelry was notably absent. Nolan, she stood. Thank you for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries. He's Saturday. What's so important you needed to speak to my father? Kelsey glanced around, then leaned forward. What I'm about to tell you could change everything, but I need assurances first. You're not in a position to demand anything. This isn't about demands, she whispered. It's about survival. Yours. Mine. All of us. Nolan studied her face for deception. Explain. Preston wasn't working alone. Neither was Graham. There's someone else, someone bigger behind all of this. She pulled out a small USB drive. This contains proof. Proof of what? Proof that Mercer Holdings has been targeted for years. What happened to you to us was part of a larger plan. Nolan didn't touch the drive. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I was part of it, Kelsey said, eyes filling. But I didn't understand how deep it went until it was too late. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Maya, something's wrong. The drive is emitting a signal. Don't touch it. Training kicked in. Nolan stood smoothly, buttoning his jacket. This meeting is over. Nolan, please Dash. Kelsey reached for his arm. You don't understand, Dash. I understand perfectly. He signaled to security. That drive contains malware, doesn't it? A Trojan to infiltrate Mercer systems. Kelsey's face crumbled. They made me do it. They said if I didn't. Dash, who made you? Who are you working for? Before she could answer, chaos erupted. Shots rang out. Patrons screamed. Nolan felt himself tackled to the floor by security as glass shattered overhead. Through the confusion, he glimpsed Kelsey being rushed away by unknown figures. Her last look back carried something he'd never seen in her eyes before: genuine fear. The executive boardroom at Mercer Holdings hummed with tension as Nolan paced before the assembled team. 24 hours had passed since the chaos at the St. Regis, and the pieces were finally coming together. The drive contained a sophisticated virus, Maya reported, fingers flying over her keyboard. If it had connected to our systems, it would have given someone complete access to everything: finances, projects, personal data. And the shooters? Nolan turned to his head of security. Professional hit team. They weren't trying to kill anyone, just a distraction to extract Kelsey. Or eliminate her. Trevor frowned. She's alive, Maya interrupted, eyes fixed on her screen. Facial recognition just picked her up at JFK boarding a private jet with Preston. Nolan stopped pacing. Destination? Filed for Singapore, but I doubt that's real. They're being moved. They're not running, Nolan said quietly. They're being moved. Someone wants them out of reach. Edward entered, face grim. Graham Vale was found dead in his cell an hour ago. Apparent suicide. The room fell silent. Apparent? Nolan asked. He was under watch. No sheets, no laces. Yet somehow he managed to hang himself, Edward said. Out of nowhere. Maya's fingers paused. This is bigger than corporate espionage, isn't it? Much bigger, Nolan agreed. Someone's cleaning house, making sure Preston and Kelsey can't talk. Eliminating Graham. Talk about what? Trevor asked. Nolan turned to his father. When did you start acquiring Vale Dynamics? 6 months ago through shell companies. Why? And before that, who owned significant shares? Edward's eyes narrowed. A consortium of Asian investment firms. They sold under market value, which is why I was interested. Maya, Nolan said, trace those firms. Her fingers flew. Complicated layers of shells and offshore accounts. Wait, Dash, she sat up straighter. They all lead back to one holding company, Phoenix Global. Never heard of them, Trevor said. That's because they don't exist, Maya replied. It's a front, and I think I know for whom. She pulled up filings, property records, bank transfers, all pointing to a familiar name. Maxwell, you. Edward breathed. Of course. Who's you? Trevor asked. The most dangerous man in Asian finance, Edward explained. He's tried to break into the U.S. market for years, but regulators blocked him due to organized crime ties. So he created Phoenix Global, Nolan finished, and used it to buy into companies like Vale Dynamics. But why target us? Trevor asked. Because 6 months ago, when we took over Vale, we unknowingly disrupted his entire U.S. operation, Maya said. We didn't just buy a company, we exposed his network. And now he's cleaning up loose ends, Nolan concluded. Preston and Kelsey know too much. Graham knew too much. Which means we know too much. Options? Edward asked. We could go to the authorities, Trevor suggested. With what proof? Maya countered. Everything leads back to companies that don't exist. We could try to negotiate, Edward offered. You don't negotiate with people like you, Nolan said. We have one option: finish this now. How? Trevor asked. You said you traced their network. Nolan turned to Maya. How far? Far enough to find weak points. Their entire operation relies on electronic transfers through specific servers. If we could access those, we expose everything, Nolan finished. Every transaction, shell, illegal deal. It would destroy them. And probably get us all killed, Edward warned. Not if we do it right. Nolan straightened his tie. Maya, how long to breach and document? Hours to get in. 12 to make it bulletproof. You have 12, Nolan decided. Trevor, prep packets for the SEC, FBI, and Interpol. Everything has to be legally airtight. What are you going to do? Edward asked. I'm going to make a phone call, Nolan said. To Singapore. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. Maya worked tirelessly, breaking through layers of security. Trevor prepared legal submissions. Edward mobilized contacts across law enforcement and finance. Nolan waited. At midnight, Maya looked up. I'm in. You need to see this. The evidence was staggering: years of illegal operations, billions in laundered money, dozens of compromised companies, and undeniable proof of Yu's involvement in everything from market manipulation to murder. Send it, Nolan commanded. With a few keystrokes, Maya released the data to agencies worldwide. Phones rang across the office. FBI moving on their U.S. nodes, Trevor reported. Interpol coordinating with Singapore authorities, Edward added. And you? Nolan asked. Maya checked her monitors. His private jet just took off from Singapore. He's running, Trevor said. No. Nolan smiled grimly. He's coming here. What? I may have mentioned, during our call, that I have certain documents about his operations, documents that could only be accessed in person. You baited him, Trevor realized. And he bit, Nolan said. He turned to his father. The trap is set. Now we wait. They didn't wait long. 3 hours later, Maxwell Yu arrived at Mercer Tower, escorted by 2 massive bodyguards. He was small, impeccably dressed, with cold eyes and a colder smile. Mr. Mercer, he bowed slightly. Your invitation was intriguing. Thank you for coming all this way, Nolan said, gesturing to a chair. The document's safe, like your operations were supposed to be. Yu's smile never wavered. So you know? We know everything, Nolan replied, pulling up displays of Yu's network. And so do the FBI, Interpol, and a dozen other agencies. Yu's smile finally faltered. You are making a very serious mistake. No, you made the mistakes. Using Preston and Kelsey as pawns. Having Graham killed. Sloppy moves. Loose ends. Careful, Yu's voice hardened. You are becoming one. The difference is, Nolan leaned forward, I'm not afraid of you. You gestured. His bodyguards stepped forward. Before they could move further, the office doors burst open. FBI agents poured in, weapons drawn. Maxwell Yu, the lead agent announced. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and murder. As they led you away, he turned back. You think this is victory. You understand nothing about power. No, Nolan corrected. I understand everything about power, including when not to use it. The next days were a whirlwind of arrests and revelations. Preston and Kelsey were apprehended in Thailand, attempting to flee to a non-extradition haven. They quickly turned on you, providing even more evidence. In the end, sentences were handed down. 16 years for you, 9 for Preston, 7 for Kelsey. Their fallen empire took dozens of corrupt executives with it. Nolan stood in his office watching the sunset paint the skyline in gold. The past week's newspapers lay on his desk, headlines screaming about the fall of Maxwell Yu's criminal empire. Quite a view, Maya said from the doorway. It's better from here now, she added, moving into the office and setting her tablet down. The last of Yu's accounts have been frozen. His network is dismantled. Kelsey is cooperating fully with authorities. She held up an envelope. She sent you a letter. Want me to dispose of it? Nolan considered, then took the envelope. Inside was a single page. Nolan, I know these words mean nothing now, but I'm sorry, not just for the affair, but for everything that came after. You were right. I never changed, never learned until now. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that in the end, I finally understood what real strength looks like. Kelsey, quite a transformation, Maya said softly. People can change, Nolan set the letter down. If they want it badly enough. Speaking of change, she moved closer. What happens now? Now. Nolan turned to face her. We rebuild. The Mercer Community Center is back on track. We're launching new initiatives for affordable housing and education. Back to your roots, she smiled. With a difference, he said. Now I have the power to make real change and someone to share it with. Maya's breath caught as he took her hand. You've been by my side through all of this, he continued, keeping me grounded, reminding me who I am. I couldn't have done any of it without you. I just did my job. No. He pulled her closer. You did more. You showed me that retribution isn't the answer, that real power is using strength to help others. And now, I'd like to see where this goes, if you're interested. Instead of answering, Maya leaned up and kissed him. When they parted, both were smiling. A knock interrupted them. Edward entered, followed by Trevor. Hope we're not interrupting, Edward said, eyes twinkling. Perfect timing. Nolan kept hold of Maya's hand. We were just discussing the future. About that, Trevor held up papers. The board approved your new initiatives. The Mercer Foundation for Community Development is officially launched. And the Old Vale properties? Nolan asked. Being converted into affordable housing and community spaces, Edward confirmed. Just like you wanted. Nolan looked around at the people in his office. His father, who'd given him the tools to fight. Trevor, who'd stood by him. Maya, who'd shown him a better way. You know, he said thoughtfully, when this started, I thought victory meant destroying my enemies. Now I realize it means becoming someone they could never be. And who's that? Maya asked. Someone who uses power to build, not destroy. Someone who remembers where he came from. He squeezed her hand. Someone worthy of the people who believed in him. The city lights twinkled like stars. In his office atop Mercer Tower, Nolan Mercer had finally found his purpose. The drive for retribution had transformed into something greater, a mission to make real change. So, Trevor grinned. When's the wedding? Maya tossed a pin at him while Nolan laughed. Edward watched with paternal pride, seeing in his son the leader he'd hoped he'd become. The story that began with betrayal and revenge had evolved into something more, like a tale of redemption, of love found in unexpected places, and of power used for good. Nolan pulled Maya closer, thinking of the possibilities ahead. He had learned his lesson about trust and true values, emerging stronger and wiser. Now, with Maya by his side and his purpose clear, he was ready to write the next chapter, not about payback, but about making a real difference. Epilogue. 6 years later, the Mercer Community Center buzzed with activity as children raced through its halls, laughter echoing off walls adorned with colorful art. In the main atrium, a bronze plaque caught the morning light. The Edward Mercer Memorial Wing, dedicated to empowering future generations. Nolan stood before the plaque, fingers tracing his father's name. At 40, he carried the quiet confidence of a man who had found his purpose. The past 6 years had transformed both him and Mercer Holdings. The art therapy class is starting. Maya's voice came from behind. She approached, her pregnancy visible beneath an elegant dress. You promised the kids you'd sit in today. Nolan smiled at his wife of 4 years. Wouldn't miss it. How's our future CEO? Active, she laughed, resting a hand on her stomach. Takes after her father, always busy. They walked through the center, passing classrooms where children learned everything from coding to music. What started as a single community center had grown into a network across the city. Trevor called, Maya said as they walked. The latest round of housing projects just got approved, 21 new developments with integrated community spaces and education hubs. He's done amazing work on the legal framework, Nolan nodded. And Sarah? Any day now. He's nervous about being a first-time dad. Tell him it gets easier. Nolan chuckled, thinking of their 4-year-old son, Edward Teddy Mercer Jr., who adored visiting the center. Edward, his father, had passed a little over a year ago. They reached the art therapy room. A familiar face looked up as they entered. The kids are making real progress, Kelsey said quietly. After serving 3 of her 7 years, Kelsey had been released early for good behavior and cooperation. She reached out not for money or favors, but for a chance to make amends. Now she taught art therapy, working with children from difficult backgrounds. Tommy's especially talented, she added. His work's being featured in next month's youth exhibition. Nolan watched her guide a young girl's brushstrokes. The woman who once mocked his charitable work was gone. In her place stood someone trying, every day, to be better. Later, at Mercer Tower, Nolan reviewed quarterly reports. Under his leadership, Mercer Holdings had evolved into something new, a corporation measuring success not just in profit, but in positive social impact. Singapore expansion is complete, Trevor announced, stepping in with a stack of papers. At 39, he had grown into the role of chief legal officer, still quick-witted and loyal. The new tech training center opens next month, and the last former Vale property is now mixed-income housing. You know Preston is up for parole next year, Trevor added. Nolan nodded. Unlike Kelsey, Preston had shown no signs of reform. Let him be. Not our concern anymore. Maxwell, you died in prison last month, Trevor said. Heart attack. Nolan's expression remained neutral. His organization is gone. Between our exposures and the international task force, there's nothing left. His son reached out about collaborating on education initiatives in Asia legitimately, Trevor said. Interesting. Nolan made a note. Redemption could come from unexpected places. A video call notification popped up the quarterly board meeting. The faces were different now. Community leaders and education experts alongside business veterans. The Mercer Foundation results this quarter are exceptional, the chair began. Your combined model of profitable ventures and social programs has exceeded projections. After the meeting, Nolan found Maya in her office, the HQ of Mercer Cybersecurity, which she ran with the same precision that helped bring down Yu's empire. Ready for dinner? We're meeting Trevor and Sarah in Brooklyn. 2 minutes, she said, typing a few commands. Someone probed our systems yesterday. Serious? Amateur hour, she smirked. Probably corporate snooping, nothing like before. We're solid. They picked up Teddy from the tower's daycare, where he helped run the company, as he liked to say. At 4, he already showed his father's determination and his mother's sharp mind. Dinner was in a neighborhood transformed by one of their projects. Where there had been derelict buildings, a vibrant hub now stood. Trevor and Sarah were waiting, her pregnancy even further along than Maya's. The two couples had grown close. Their children would grow up together, just as Nolan and Trevor had hoped. To old friends, Trevor raised his glass. And new beginnings, Maya added, touching her water to his wine. Afterward, they walked the block. Teddy peppered Nolan with questions about the buildings. Daddy, why do you make buildings for people? Because everyone deserves a chance to build a good life, Nolan said. Sometimes they just need someone to help. Back home in their penthouse, a building they developed themselves, Nolan stood on the balcony with Maya, watching the city lights. Any regrets? She asked softly. About what? About not staying on the revenge path. About choosing to build. Never, Nolan said, pulling her close. Payback would have made me like them. This made me better. The next morning brought a surprise visitor, Graham Vale's grandson, now 22. Mr. Mercer, the young man said, fidgeting. I'm not here to cause trouble. I want to learn. To use wealth and power the right way. Nolan studied him, remembering his own journey. Have you considered our community development fellowship? The conversation reminded Nolan how far he'd come from seeking retribution to shaping the next generation. At the opening of a new education facility that week, Nolan stood at the podium. He saw Kelsey in the crowd with her students, Trevor and Sarah, Maya and Teddy, community leaders and partners. 6 years ago, he began, I thought power meant destroying your enemies. I learned thanks to some very wise people that real power lies in building and lifting others up. He gestured to the building behind him. This isn't just about opportunity. It's about transformation. Choosing to become something better than what life first offered. I know because it's my story, too. The applause that followed wasn't just for his words, but for the proof around them. That evening, as Teddy stacked blocks while Maya worked nearby, Nolan reflected on victory. It wasn't in defeating enemies or hoarding power, it was in changed lives, thriving communities, and a legacy that would outlast him. Look, Daddy. Teddy held up his block city. I built a skyline. Yes, you did, Nolan smiled. And someday, you'll build real ones. Night fell over their city. Once driven by retribution, but now guided by purpose, Nolan Mercer held his family close. The wounds of the past had healed, replaced by the joy of creation, the love of those who helped him become not just successful, but truly victorious. In the end, His story wasn't about revenge, it was about redemption. Not destruction, but creation. Not power wielded in anger, but strength used to lift others up. And in that transformation lay his greatest victory of all.